Hello everybody and welcome back to Mastering Avantra. Today's topic is all about agent auto-registration or self-registration as well as SAP System auto-discovery. So what I'm going to show you today is exactly how to do an agent self-registration on a remote machine, which also contains an SAP system which will be auto-created within our Avantra instance. So let's go ahead and get started. So here I am logged into my Avantra master server, and you can see here that I'm running Avantra version 21.11. Now this is important because this feature, in fact both these features are only available from 21.11 and above, both from the master side but also from the agent side. So that's the first thing. The second thing I want to show you is what's configured in this system. So at the moment we have one virtual machine here, which is actually the master server itself. And so we'll be adding another one here, but we won't do it using the traditional new physical server options that we have here. It should be auto-created. The second thing I'll show you here is under SAP Systems, we've none configured. And if I show you under SAP Instances, there's nothing there either. So we're going to make sure that these two tabs get populated automatically based on what is on the remote machine. So let's go ahead and get started. There's one configuration option I want to show you within Avantra before we move over to the remote machine. And this is under parameter sets. So for those of you who don't know, and I assume most of you do, parameter sets are individual configuration items that you can apply to individual servers or apply to groups of servers. In this case, I'm using parameter sets to push them down to groups of servers. And what I'm doing here is I'm applying a parameter set for all servers. And you can see here, it just says, hey, pick any server that happens to be configured. And at the moment, that would be the one server that we have going. And so the two parameters I want to show you here, the first one is specific to my landscape. I'm using SAP logical host detection based on the fact that my host name on my remote machine is a little bit odd because I'm using one of the CAL instances. But this is the one that's probably most interesting to everybody here, which is the SAP System Auto Creation. So this is when the agent detects an SAP system, should it auto create that system inside an Avantra. And so by default, this is delivered as off. And so I'm selecting it to active. You can also choose to say, yes, create them, but put it to not operational, or yes, create it, but put it to monitoring off. And then in my case, I'm going, yes, create it and make it active immediately. Now, the reason this is switched off by default is that sometimes you may want specific customers or specific groups of servers where you want to do this auto detection and specific servers where you don't. And so this is why I always say start off by enabling this on the group of servers where you want this activity to be capable of happening. Okay, so that's it from within Avantra. So we're ready to go. Let's pop over to the remote machine. It's over here. Whoa. So here I have a machine. It's running an SAP system. It's called SID NPL, and I have an agent installer file ready to go. Now, normally we would just do something like this, hit enter and follow through the wizard and do our installation. And then we'd go back to Avantra and create the machine. And you know, it's quite a manual process. So what we can do is we can now provide runtime arguments to the installer to auto-register within Avantra. I'm going to pop over to the documentation, and you can see here on docs.avantra.com under the 21.11 documentation, under installing the Avantra agent, and here installation with automatic agent registration, you can see a list of all the options you can provide to your installer during the installation process. Now, there are only two that are mandatory. The first one is the master host, which is quite obvious. Where is the master server? And the second one is the customer ID. So this is important in a multi-tenant environment. If you're just using Avantra as a single tenant environment, it's probably one, maybe two, but we'll pick that up in a few moments. The other things you can specify are the port number on the master server. So for example, if you had decided to change it from the default, which is 9050, you might want to change this. The master connect route. So if you're using gateways or you've reverse proxies or whatever the case may be, and you're starting to use the route configurator as we have within Avantra, so here under routes, and you're starting to design different routes with gateways and backup gateways, it's this string you can provide so that the remote agent knows how does it communicate back to the master server. Bearing in mind that all the gateways in the middle will need to understand that this is an agent self-registration, and so by default they would need to be at 2111 themselves. Just something to keep in mind. Agent IP address, so the FQDN or IP address of the agent as seen from the master. If it's undefined, Avantra will use the remote IP address of the agent. And the system role, which is test, production, or whatever you configured within your system. And finally, if you're using a non-standard agent port as opposed to the default, which is 9051, you can specify that as well. So for what I'm doing, I'm going to use the master host, I'm going to use the cust ID, and I'm going to use one from up here as well, which is one of the older ones, which is a silent install. So I don't want it prompting me as I'm going through. So I start with my 2 dashes, and remember those 2 dashes tell the installer, hey, there's some flags here you need to have a look at. I'm going to say master host is equal to, let's get it from the Avantra server. So we'll close this and we'll go to about an Avantra master. And here's my master server hostname. So I'll paste this in here. We said cust ID. Okay, so what's my customer ID? You could just go with 1, but you don't know where it's going to end up. So let's go with administration and customers. Now I only have 1 customer configured here, which is called Avantra Value Pack Development. And you can see here beside the name, it tells me the customer ID. So the ID in my case is 1. So I say cust ID is equal to 1. And then finally, I'm going to do my silent install. So that's it. That's all I have to do. So let's go back to Avantra. We'll go up to the systems and servers just to show you I'm not cheating. There's nothing here that shouldn't be here right now. And I'm going to hit enter over here. So that installer is going to run through. It's found Java, which I installed earlier, and it's not going to prompt me for anything else. And it'll start the agent on port 9051. Now over here in Avantra, it's already popping me up with these nice new blue boxes saying auto-created new server, SID NPL. Okay, let's refresh our screen. There it is. So our server has been automatically configured with the physical server name, the IP address, the customer has been selected, the system role defaulted to test. Remember, we didn't change that. And now it's saying this server has been automatically added during installation. Press confirm to confirm it. Okay, now that's a security feature. And you can do bulk confirmations as well. So let's say you're using Ansible to deploy to 100 servers at once and they're all self-registering. You can confirm those 100 at once. So it's not going to be a click, 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 click exercise. It's just going to be a click once and away you go. So that confirmation has informed the remote agent now, hey, you've been accepted. Give me all the information about your server. And so this should happen pretty quickly, and it's already gone green, and we should start to see loads of information. Okay, it's a SUSE 15.1 box, etc., etc., and it's good to go. So what we've done there is complete agent self-registration with only confirmation interaction at the Avantra master server level. So we're really in really good shape here. And so it's going to start communicating back and forth and doing its first set of self-checks. And it'll populate back here and you can see all the information here starting to come through from its self-check to everything else. The other thing I want to show you is if I pop into monitoring parameters, you can see here my parameter set from all servers has already been applied to this remote agent. Just refresh this here. And so my SAP logical host detection and my SAP system auto creation are enabled on this server by default, and I didn't have to do anything. So that's quite cool. And now what we're looking for is we're waiting for the agent to do its first set of self-checks and to start sending the information back to Avantra to say, hey, I detected an SAP system and I'm going to auto-create it. So we'll give this a couple of minutes to do that now. So what we're going to do is we're going to wait for that blue box to pop up in the same way we saw it earlier, which was the auto-created new server SID NPL. We should see one here in a few minutes saying auto-created SAP system. So let's see what we're getting on with the checks. So that's grand. Let's just do a little bit of a force of sending of the new configuration. So we've sent, oh, there we go. So auto-created new SAP system. Now, I use the send to agent because I'm doing a demo and I'd like this to happen a little bit faster. But the reality is the check cycle is once every 5 minutes. So typically within 5 minutes of confirming a new server within your Avantra master server, it will start auto-creating any SAP systems it finds. So I do a refresh here. So we suddenly see SAP systems. Do we see the instances yet? Yes, we do, but they're in an unknown state. So we come into SAP systems and we say, okay, this SAP system has been automatically created, press confirm to enable it, and install the Avantra transports to fully monitor it. So I'm going to confirm. and say, there we go. So what that does now is it communicates back to the Avantra agent and it says, hey, this SAP system has been accepted, start monitoring it in a bit more detail. And so what happens by default is one of our new monitoring levels kicks in. Because we know nothing about this SAP system yet. We don't know what credentials are, we don't know whether the Avantra transports are installed, so we can only kind of look around it from within the machine. We can't actually go inside it, but we can derive a lot of information from just observations at the OS level. And so what Avantra will do at this point, in the state of connected, it will deploy these 3 checks. So it will check to see, hey, from an RFC connection perspective, can I hit this SAP system? Is the message server up and running? And it'll do some checks around system alive. So it'll check the message server, it'll check for the database, and so on and so forth. So immediately you get visibility, and as you can see here, it's already done this. You get visibility into the health of the the SAP system without providing any other information. So this is really, really cool, and it means you're getting instant visibility while you perhaps are waiting for approvals to get your user for logging into the SAP system or approvals for your transports to be installed. Now, one of the checks here is showing warning, no database server found. What does that mean? That means that while we know that this database, the database under this system is a Sybase base, and we know a Sybase system, and we know it's on this host, we don't know what the monitoring server is to access this host. We haven't told it. So in this case, it's really simple. I'm going to use the system itself. So sidmpl and say go. And what this does, and I'm going to send that to the agent, what this does is it allows us to then start testing the database connectivity for this system. And so this should allow the system alive to go back to green. So once it finds the database server, it'll be able to check is it up and all this kind of fun stuff. So we should see this check go back to green in a few minutes. Again, it has to go through a check cycle. So it's going to take us a little time while it's doing that, but we'll keep an eye on that over the next couple of seconds. The next thing we need to do is we need to provide credentials to move from connected to authenticated as the next level of monitoring. So I'm going to go to RFC user and let's do a quick refresh here. Just to see if we're starting to get some more information. No, it's still 2 minutes and 48 seconds old. It'll be a little while before we get the update. Again, the check cycle is once every 5 minutes. So in the meantime, let's provide an RFC user. So Avantra is my RFC user. I've configured this ahead of time. And my logon client is 001. My ABAP database schema user is, I've written down over here, SAP SR3. And I provide the password. Like that. And my SAP controls user is npl adm, and there's my password, like that. So what that means is that we've now given Avantra the information to move from monitoring level connected up to the next one, which is authenticated. And once we're authenticated, then we can start to look around inside the system and give you a lot more information about the health of your system at any given point in time. Apologies, I lost my VPN connection there temporarily, so I've been set back ever so slightly. But just to show you here, so the connected system, if I go into checks, you can see here now that we have our system alive, which is showing our database server, our DB Connect, central instance, ABAP central services, RFC Connect, and the message server are all showing us okay. So the system's gone green, which is fantastic. So we've a green system from a observation from the outside perspective. So what we were doing next was we were adding in our RFC users like this. We were, for like that, let's retype that. We were adding in our ABAP DB schema user. So in this case, it was SAP SR3. Like that. And our SAP control user, which was npl adm. So what we do now is we hit apply and we send to agent. So what this is going to do is it's going to bring us up a monitoring level from connected to authenticated. And once we hit authenticated, then we get to look inside the system at a lot more information. And we'll see those checks being deployed in a few moments. So what we do now is pop over to checks. And now suddenly we're seeing stuff like dialogue response times, the backup status of our database, etc., etc. Now, in this case, I've already deployed the Avantra transports to this system. So of the 3 levels, connected, authenticated and deployed, I'm already straight all the way through to authenticated and deployed. And that's because the system has already detected that the Avantra transports are present in the system. And what that means now is suddenly we're getting all the information we would normally get from a in-depth analysis of the system in a real-time fashion that is part of the standard Avantra monitoring within this system. You'll also see over here we've database version, product information, and all that kind of stuff starting to come through. And over the next kind of 10-15 minutes, all the various pieces of information like component versions, bases, releases, and all this kind of fun stuff will start to populate through here. You can see here I'm using the Avantra Transports 20.11.6, for example. So you'll see all that stuff starting to come through as these checks start to execute. And you can see here there's even more being deployed as it starts finding out, oh, this is a system where I should be monitoring short dumps. If it was a solution manager system, for example, it would start saying, hey, I better deploy the 6 solution manager checks and all this kind of stuff. So you start to see all that stuff starting to come through pretty much over the next 10-15 minutes, which I won't sit here and wait through. And then these tabs will start to be populated bit by bit. The one I would draw attention to here is we've this new tab called SAP Notes. So if you deploy the 21.11 transports alongside the 21.11 agent, you will now get an inventory of all the SAP notes within your SAP system. And everything I've talked through here is available in Avantra in every edition. So if you want to start using it, please do. So there we go. We've done a agent self-registration from the remote agent into an Avantra instance, and we confirmed that within the instance, and it started doing automated SAP system detection and automatically created that system for us and put it into what we call connected mode, where we are able to look outside the system and say, hey, yes, we can connect to the right ports for RFC connections. Yes, the message server is running. This system is good. Then we provided credentials so that the system, the Avantra agent, could log into the system and start to do more in-depth analysis, and that's what we called authenticated. And then finally, once the SAP transports were imported for Avantra, then we moved to the highest connected level or connectivity level or monitoring level, which was authenticated and deployed, which gave us that full insight into everything that was happening within our system. So please go ahead and start using this feature now. It's available in 21.11.0 and above for the master and the agent. Thanks very much for watching. See you next time.